KAAA 39 Global warming is real and must be prevented. Global warming is real, of that there is no doubt. Different media worldwide transmit news about the matter, something that is serving to awaken the necessary public interest and carry out measures in this regard. Although there are still people who prefer to leave this problem aside, awareness about it is already being made from the educational centers. In this way, the new generations are growing with a more consistent mentality. So, it only remains to establish forms and actions that help mitigate the effects it is causing. It is necessary to understand the gravity involved in global warming for humanity. To achieve this, it must be clear what it is about. It consists in the progressive increase of the average temperature on planet Earth, both in the atmosphere and in the seas. This produces variations in the weather patterns, which are reflected in the retreat of the glaciers, droughts, alterations of habitats, rainfall, extinction of species, among others. Establish measures that help counteract the effects of global warming will only be possible when people know what factors cause it. First of all, there is environmental contamination, a consequence of the factories that do not regulate the release of toxic gases and the excess of old or poorly used vehicles that use fossil fuels. On the other hand is the massive release of CO2, which alters the chemical composition of the atmosphere. Among other causes, the latter is a product of forest fires. Nature, under normal conditions, would be able to maintain a balance on the planet. However, the intervention of man makes this impossible, due to his abuse in the management of the resources that it provides. It is worth mentioning that the heating and cooling processes are not new, but have always been part of the evolution of the Earth. The problem consists in the accelerated rhythm with which global warming is taking place, causing consequences that in the long term will be irremediable. Having explained all this, it is easier to understand what can be done about it. The fact of promoting the use of renewable energies is very important, since this will allow a reduction in CO2 emissions. Likewise, the controlled use of automobiles, opting for other non-motorized vehicles, or the fact of walking, can help to reduce the amount of pollution that occurs. Reforestation is another important point, because trees are able to absorb CO2 and produce oxygen. All these measures are essential to prevent global warming. KAAA 40 The advantages of nutritional supplements to maintain good health. The concern for having better health and fitness has become one of the most important issues of recent years. Countless people are in search of maintaining good nutrition, motivated by the testimonies of athletes and fitness fans that appear on social networks and other mass media. However, in today's world, the accelerated life to which we are accustomed makes it difficult to access a balanced diet. Thinking about this, all kinds of nutritional supplements have been developed, which have a series of very interesting properties and advantages. One of the most striking features of these products is their assimilation, which is faster and more effective compared to ordinary foods. This is possible thanks to the advanced processes involved in its production, which employ new technologies to isolate the most important nutrients that any human being should consume. In this way, their digestion and metabolism takes place in less time, which also favors people suffering from eating disorders, which prevent them from appropriately assimilating certain foods. On the other hand, nutritional supplements can be taken in a fairly simple way. People who must follow demanding schedules usually opt for junk food, which they buy in establishments where the flavor is prioritized from chemical aggregates that have nothing healthy. Instead of this, they have the option of taking shakes, capsules or pills, to supplement their diet. This facilitates the consumption of proteins, minerals, and vitamins, helping to combat the onset of diseases and other ailments. It is necessary to clarify that the nutritional content of each supplement is different. There are substances that have been specifically developed to supply large amounts of proteins and hydrolyzed carbohydrates, being perfect for athletes or people who exercise during the day. while others are indicated to replenish glycogen deposits, allowing energy to be obtained immediately or gradually. The response of the organism will depend on its composition and structure, varying both at the hormonal and metabolic levels. All this must be taken into account, even more knowing the wide variety of products offered by the market. Health specialists always warn that nutritional supplements should not be used to replace meals. Protein shakes, for example, are natural products, but in high doses can cause renal and liver overloads. Its function should be to complement an unbalanced diet, but always taking into consideration that its consumption in excess can bring certain complications. CCAA 41. The importance of the decriminalization of abortion. En la actualidad, en especial en los países del tercer mundo, la despenalización del aborto debería ser considerada como una obligación para cada gobierno. Involucra una decisión individual, lejos de obligaciones sociales impuestas por dogmas religiosos o presiones mediáticas. Asimismo, representa una alternativa sumamente importante en caso de embarazos no deseados que se producen en la adolescencia o en circunstancias condenables. People who are against abortion hide behind human rights and their religious beliefs. However, if analyzed from a scientific point of view, far from subjective opinions and pro-life fanaticism, it is clear that during the first days of gestation there is only one set of cells. It cannot be considered properly a human being, because the only thing that it shares with us is the genetic code. On the other hand, the number of unwanted pregnancies among adolescents is alarming. In Latin America, it is the product of a lack of education. Both on the part of schools, which have not structured courses in this regard, as parents, who do not teach their children the basics to lead a responsible and safe sex life. In addition, there is the pressure of the mass media, which bombard young people with suggestive messages without clarifying the possible consequences. It is also worth mentioning the cases of rape, where, aside from the fact that the pregnancy already has a considerable time, it should be the decision of each woman to choose or not to have an abortion. It does not have to be forced to continue in that situation if you do not want it. It is your life and you have the right to proceed as you see fit. The problem of the illegality of abortion occurs when the aforementioned women do not have the freedom to choose, and they must opt for a process that is not supported by a hospital or institution of trust. So, many times they themselves put their lives in danger, in the hands of unscrupulous people who only seek to profit. In conclusion, decriminalizing abortion is extremely important. In the socio-economic aspect, it may be the only option if the parents do not have the necessary resources to supply the unborn baby with basic needs. While in the case of unwanted pregnancies due to lack of education in young people or cases of abuse, abortion represents a right for every woman, since it is her opportunity to define her own life, and not be forced by laws or religions. AAA 42. Boredom in adolescence and how to fight it. In recent years, several studies have revealed that adolescents around the world suffer from unprecedented boredom. Although this is not very relevant in the adult world, it is necessary to understand that its repercussion over time can have very negative effects, even more taking into account that future generations will be in charge of maintaining social and economic stability in each country. Postmodern young people, in many cases, show a deep aversion to boredom, because they perceive it as a terrible burden that they must go through. For them it is unbearable, so they are motivated to look for ways to have fun, in a constant and intense way. This is quite alarming, since several sociologists and psychologists have shown that this desire can lead to harmful activities, such as the consumption of alcoholic beverages and different types of drugs. Also, the appearance of addictions to gambling, to social networks and even to sex is common. In large part, all this is a consequence of the digital age in which we live, which, although it has facilitated access to information and has connected the whole world, has a negative effect on the development of patience and reflection, since children grow accustomed to immediacy and their level of dissatisfaction surpasses that of past decades. On the other hand, this is also caused by the expectations that are held about adolescents, who are often seen as irresponsible and immature individuals, something that ends up convincing them that the same is expected of them. Therefore, it is a problem that starts from the inability of governments, the education system and family formation, which continues to present an inefficient and unattractive model of how they should be. In the absence of a system that tries to understand them, instead of forcing a certain lifestyle and preferences, young people get bored and look for artificial spaces. In this way, most opt for virtual or psychedelic environments, where they are not controlled and there is sensory saturation. It is also important to mention that there is currently an early exposure to consumer and leisure media. So, it only remains to ask, how can you solve boredom during adolescence? The answer is to change the way young people are perceived, but even more so to focus on promoting an introspective culture. In this way, they will have the opportunity to think, analyze, and contemplate. In this way, they can develop internally and cultivate a creative function, which will facilitate the feeling of being freer. AAA. 43 Cultural identity in the countries of Latin America. Identity is one of the most important aspects in the life of any person, having an impact on institutions and countries. At present, where the process of cultural globalization is moving forward in a fast-paced way, it is essential that people reflect on their role in the world. In this way they can establish objectives and consider a particular mission. The countries that make up Latin America have gone through a series of stages since independence. It is necessary to understand that this process has brought with it the search for a cultural identity, which often comes into conflict with foreign tendencies and the influence of the media at an international level. In most cases this is due to the growing use of the Internet, which has become part of everyday life. The construction of a national identity depends very much on the efforts of each government, since it is the public officials who set the example. Likewise, it is in their hands to dedicate efforts to exalt the traditions and customs of their nation, without adopting new tendencies that only distort the culture. This discovery and construction is a responsibility of the state, but citizens must also do their part through public debate and the celebration of native festivities. Apart from religious beliefs, there are annual commotions such as Holy Week that are accompanied by several elements of great cultural richness. In this way, people have the possibility to find aromas, sounds, foods, clothing, and other symbols that are typical of their country. This is very important, given that personal identity is always subject to change and must be reconquered continuously. Today, modern society prioritizes anti-values such as competition, materialism, and lack of solidarity. All this in terms of consumer fashion and hedonism. This reality raises profound questions about social stability, which is threatened by superficial and pragmatic positions. It is here where cultural identity acquires more value, allowing people to understand each other as part of a group, and to work according to progress and sustainable development. The cultural identity in Latin American countries is the result of a set of interests, codes, and rituals, which is shared by the majority of people in a given nation. When you become aware of this, it is easier to consider a personal goal, bearing in mind that we share the same rights and freedoms. Only in this way will we be able to claim and maintain our culture in an ethical and organized way.